"He died for me, he died for me, God bless him." Those words spoken through tears by an elderly woman as she watched Lincoln's coffin pass through the streets of Lower Manhattan. Captured now, she and many other African Americans felt about the president's death. Everyone, white and black, knew that Lincoln's role in ending slavery had spawned the murderous hatred that took his life. Understandably, African Americans hoped to take their places in the front ranks of the mourners. More than 5,000 planned to march in New York City, but many white Americans had different ideas. Several days before the funeral train arrived, municipal authorities decreed that no black marchers would be allowed in the procession. Edwin Stanton, the Secretary of War, sent a furious telegram from Washington overruling the ban, but the intimidation had worked. The vast parade down Broadway on April 24 included Irish firemen by the thousands, German marching bands, Italian social clubs, Roman Catholic priests, and Jewish rabbis, as well as special delegations of bakery employees, cigar makers, Freemasons, Glee Club members, and temperance activists. A couple of hundred African Americans brought up the very rear. To retrace Lincoln's funeral route today is to be reminded often of that bitter lesson. In Buffalo, I visit the city's 19th century landmarks, not just the terminus of the Erie Canal, once the gateway to the west, but also relics such as Michigan Street Baptist Church, built in the 1840s as a hub of the city's intellectually vibrant and politically active black community. Near Philadelphia, this section of Amtrak's busy Northeast Corridor line runs along the 19th century railroad. Bells tolled and cannon fired salutes at every town and village along this part of the journey. In this and like communities, public sentiment is everything. With public sentiment, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. Abraham Lincoln, First Lincoln-Douglas debate, August 21st, 1858. Nationally renowned activists and preachers spoke in the handsome, sun-drenched sanctuary. Fugitive slaves took shelter in the basement. Over the next century, a neighborhood of shops, restaurants, and clubs grew and flourished in the surrounding blocks. Today, Buffalo is one of the poorest cities in the nation and among the most racially balkanized. The old church stands marooned in a bleak urban landscape. Its present-day pastor, Bishop Clarence Montgomery, tells me that only half of the city's young African Americans finish high school, despite a few glimmers of hope, such as a historic jazz club that now houses an impressive museum of Buffalo's rich musical heritage. Most of the surrounding blocks are dominated by vacant storefronts, public housing, and shotgun-style houses. I'm surprised when just a few blocks north along Michigan Avenue, the urban decay gives way to another world, a strip of gleaming hospital buildings and offices with more under construction nearby. It's the city's new medical corridor, a promising sign of economic recovery, except that almost everyone I see, from the patients to the medical workers to the construction crews, is white. Michigan Avenue is becoming our Mason-Dixon line, says George Arthur, a former city council president and longtime leader among local African Americans. The medical corridor is bringing prosperity to the white community, but almost none of that reaches our black community, which has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. Indeed, Arthur tells me that when it comes to racial disparities, history seems to move backward as often as forward. One of the first lawsuits in America to integrate public schools started in Buffalo in 1868, he says. That effort succeeded, but by the time Arthur entered politics nearby a century later, de facto segregation had long since returned to the schools. He helped lead a successful movement to integrate them in the 1970s, but now the schools have resegregated again, and we're back in the same boat as in the 60s, he observes. Both the 1960s and the 1860s, take your choice. On its journey up the Hudson River, across the Empire State, and down the shores of Lake Erie, Lincoln's funeral train rode the same rail corridors that Amtrak now uses. In fact, even as the journey unfolded, the railroad baron Cornelius Vanderbilt was at a critical moment in his struggle to forge a single corporate dominion out of antebellum America's dozens of small local lines. In 1860s, America, the railroad was more than just a new technology. It was a kind of national cult. A few months before the end of the Civil War, the abolitionist leader William Lloyd Garrison waxed masticated about the revolution that trains had brought, fostering not just economic prosperity but also human connection on a vast scale. So many the modes of communication and the ties of life continue to multiply, until all nations shall feel a common sympathy and worship of a common shrine. Millions of Americans who didn't witness the funeral pageantry in person still caught vivid glimpses via new technology. Placed in a stereoscope, this double image offered a 3D view of the cottage passing down Broadway.